What is going on, Dodger fans? Thank you for tuning in to the Incline Dodgers podcast presented by Tick Pick and Fansided. We've got a jam-packed episode today, maybe the most amount of topics we're going to ever cover in the history of the Incline. There's just so much going on with the winter meetings, crazy amount of rumors. Dodgers already making multiple signings, having a pretty big splash this offseason. And of course, we'll talk about Juan Soto, share our thoughts with that, and get to the rumors that the Dodgers are currently involved in and some Dodgers that might be leaving the team. So we got that all covered. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button while you're here. If you got questions for us, we'll make sure to get to your guys' questions or comments below. And let me pass it off to Jake Reiner. So Jake, how you doing in December?
I'm doing great, Kevin. This is a great time for to be a baseball fan, which is the winter meetings. One of the two times during the calendar year where there are a flurry of different moves, trades, free agent signings, the other one being the actual trade deadline during the season. But this is the big movers and shakers of the offseason are all meeting in one place in Dallas, and they're already making a ton of deals. The Dodgers have addressed a number of their needs so far. We already talked about Blake Snell, but they wrapped up another Blake as well. Blake Treinen is coming back. Tommy Edman has been extended. Michael Conforto is joining the team. So we've got a lot of different moves that are happening with the Dodgers. We knew that they weren't going to get Juan Soto. We knew that they were kind of just there to maybe jack up the price or maybe see if Soto would want maybe a shorter term contract to opt out and get even more money. But the Mets and Steve Cohen were not going to be defeated. I mean, he was willing to put as much money on Juan Soto as humanly possible, and they did. An insane contract that I think it could turn out to be one of the worst contracts of all time, given what we know about Juan Soto and his defensive limits. And we don't really know if he's actually 26 or not. There's a lot of rumors out there. So I don't know. Would not be a huge fan if the Dodgers did something similar like that with Juan Soto, because they already got the best player in baseball in Shohei Ohtani. So now it's just about keeping this core together and then building on the success.
Yeah, we'll get into some more Juan Soto talks and what the Dodgers offered to him in a little bit. But I want to start the show off with somewhat breaking news, however you want to define it. So obviously with the winter meetings here, Dodgers front office is there. Dave Roberts has spoken with the media, but we're going to go to Brandon Gomes first, who dropped some news that I'm not too excited about. I'm sure it's going to be mixed reaction from Dodger fans, but he flat out said going into the 2025 season, they are planning on having Mookie Betts be the team's everyday shortstop, and Mookie Betts is already preparing himself this offseason to become the Dodgers 2025 shortstop once again. So let's stop there. How does that make you feel with that announcement, Jake?
Well, if you've listened to our podcast at all during the regular season last year, Kevin, you'd know that we hate Mookie Betts at shortstop. We've never liked it. It's never been a good thing. Of course, last season, he was kind of thrust into that position because of Gavin Lux's inability to field the position. So he kind of had to move over there in an emergency. But it just wasn't a good experiment. I mean, yes, Mookie Betts is an all-class athlete, and he can pretty much do anything if he sets his mind to it. I trust it. And so I have no doubt that he could become a decent shortstop, with the amount of time that he's putting into it. I just don't like the move. I think that there's no need to do that. With the Dodgers having the winning culture that they have, the ability to get any player, the ability to sign players that can play multiple positions. You don't need to make your multi-million-dollar star play a position that he's not familiar with. Now, on the other hand, you do have an entire offseason for him to work on this and hopefully get better as the season rolls around. But to me, shortstop is a young man's position. And I'm not saying Mookie Betts is old by any standard, but he's not getting any younger. None of us are. So to move him to shortstop in sort of a permanent role now in his career, I just don't see what the point of doing that is. And to me, it doesn't seem like a good move. But hey, if he ends up winning a Gold Glove at shortstop, then I'll eat my words. I have no problem doing that. But at the outset, it just doesn't feel good to me. I feel like they could have done this a better way, a rearranging of all of the positions. I just don't understand why we're putting someone at shortstop, a premier position, and we're playing him out of position.
If the Dodgers are moving Mookie Betts to shortstop purely on the fascination of keeping Gavin Lux as their everyday second baseman, then I hate the move, because I don't think it's worth sacrificing Mookie Betts' glove, especially in right field, or at the very least second base, where he's proven he's a premier defender, to be a shortstop, which now, given some time and workout opportunities in the offseason, I'm sure he'll be a much better defensive shortstop than he was for the Dodgers in kind of a more expedited fashion this most previous season. But I still don't feel like at the end of the day, it's the optimal defensive position for Mookie Betts to play shortstop. I'd be much more comfortable with guys that have spent years and are more accustomed to playing the position. I was under the impression Tommy Edman was going to be the Dodgers' backup shortstop plan if they weren't going to get Willy Adames, who announced he was going to the Giants on that massive contract. We know that the Dodgers were pretty heavily linked to Willy Adames, but ultimately didn't offer what San Francisco was willing to pay. And so now, if Mookie Betts is the shortstop because they didn't get Adames and they can't find anyone in the market, and they want Gavin Lux to be the second baseman, I don't know if I'm really on board with that. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. That doesn't seem like a very good defensive infield right there. And then you've got Max Muncy, who Gomes is saying the expectation is he'll be the third baseman. Something just doesn't add up here. And I'll stop there so that you could say maybe something on that.
Yeah, it doesn't make very much sense. I mean, you're playing guys out of position. Max Muncy, who had to do a lot of work in order to become a serviceable third baseman last year, had to do that work. They signed Freddie Freeman, taking Muncy out of his base. And then you have that. Then you have Gavin Lux, who they've tried to move all around the diamond, trying to make him into a Chris Taylor / Tommy Edman. That has not worked, because they said his original position was shortstop, but we saw that he didn't have the ability to do that job. I mean, it was horrendous in spring training, and maybe his knee wasn't fully healed or whatever. Then they move him to second base, and he's been a fine second baseman. He hasn't been horrendous over there, but his bat is so inconsistent that you can't really justify putting him in the lineup every day. Then you have Mookie Betts, who is a Gold Glove right fielder, and thank God they were able to move him back to right field for the playoff run, because I don't know if I could have stomached him at shortstop making errors in the big games in the playoffs. I mean, shit, Miguel Rojas, who is as sure-handed as anybody over there, basically lost his job in the playoffs because he either was too old, too injured to play the position. They needed to make a move there, and they ended up moving Tommy Edman to shortstop. And Tommy did fine. He did a great job, but I just, with the organization that is as well oiled as this one is, to be kind of like doing a trial and error thing at shortstop of all positions, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, and it looks like a lot of people in the chat agree with that too. Like Nando 390, Mookie to shortstop makes no sense. Raleigh Alvarez, I hate Mookie at short, stupid move. And then we'll get to some of your guys' more comments in a second. Hit that like button if you haven't yet. So the only thing I could think of why Mookie Betts would be shortstop, and in my head, even before this all came up, the one way I could accept this is if the plan is for Mookie Betts to play shortstop, Max Muncy to play second base, and a guy that is more than likely to be traded maybe as soon as the end of this winter meetings from the St. Louis Cardinals. Even the GM and owner have said they expect him to be traded. Nolan Arenado, who has been linked to the Dodgers as well as other teams, could be on his way out of St. Louis. And some of the early reports say that the Dodgers are one of his favorite destinations. No surprise there. And they've gone as far as to saying that Chris Taylor could be involved in the salary dump, and they would take on his contract to get the 3 years, $64 million that are owed to Nolan Arenado off the Cardinals' books. And I honestly don't think it would cost much at all to trade for Nolan Arenado and bring him in a Dodgers uniform. I think the Cardinals are in a tough situation with the no trade clause. They can't really move him around and get the deal they want because Nolan, at the end of the day, has the final say. And if he's going to say, I only want to go to the Dodgers, then the Cardinals have almost no choice but to kind of accept a measly offer from the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's kind of a dicey situation because the Dodgers don't necessarily need Nolan Arenado because they have Max Muncy at third base. And offensively, Arenado is on the decline. But after one bad season, I don't think it's fair to write this guy's career off at all. He might have just had one bad year. At the end of the day, Nolan Arenado is a baseball Hall of Famer, arguably the best defensive third baseman of all time. And we'll get to Teoscar Hernandez if they're going to lose him in free agency. Nolan Arenado is not a bad right-handed bat to replace Teoscar Hernandez if the Dodgers lose him to the Yankees or the Red Sox. What are your thoughts on Nolan Arenado?
I've loved Nolan Arenado for the entirety of his career. He's been one of, if not the best defensive third basemen of our lifetimes. I mean, you could make an argument for maybe Adrian Beltre as being maybe better than him or as good. But there's no doubt about that. And then there was a big question mark when he went from the Rockies playing at Coors Field every day to the Cardinals in 2021, if the power numbers would remain. And it looks like they have pretty much. I mean, in 21, he hit 34 homers. In 22, he hit 30. And in 23, he hit 26. And then last year, he hit 16. So obviously, we're trending downward here in terms of the power. Also, the RBIs have gone down, and the slugging percentage has dipped considerably. So there is a noticeable decline there in terms of his offensive production. He is 33 years old, so there is that too. But if you can add a guy like Nolan Arenado, you should, and especially if it's only going to cost a Chris Taylor or a Gavin Lux and maybe a highly touted prospect, then maybe you do it. To me, though, again, the same thing that you just said, I was saying about Juan Soto, which is the Dodgers don't really need these guys. I think they need Teoscar Hernandez, not just for the production, but for what he provides in the clubhouse. He's a proven winner, wants to be here, all of those reasons that we've all listed ad nauseum on this podcast. I just don't understand why you wouldn't just get that done now that Soto has signed or is in agreement on a contract with the Mets. Why then you wouldn't just wrap up Teoscar Hernandez and bring him home and then figure out the rest from there? That to me needs to be the priority. Nolan Arenado is a nice piece, and I think that if you're able to get him, he would. I mean, obviously he's a great third baseman. I don't know if I love the shortstop second base combo of Mookie Betts and Max Muncy. I don't love that. I mean, That sounds like it could be a disaster defensively, but offensively, I mean, that's a dream.
I just don't think Nolan Arenado is at the stage of his career where he's completely a useless dead bat. I mean, you look at his advanced stats, he still doesn't strike out a whole lot, and he barely swings and misses at pitches out of the zone. I think if you put him in the Dodgers lineup, he most certainly will see a big juice in his offensive numbers because instead of just having to worry about batting with a washed Paul Goldschmidt, he gets to hit behind Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, maybe Max Muncy, and Nolan Arenado, and that would be a beastly lineup. And so if it comes between Nolan Arenado or sticking with Gavin Lux and Chris Taylor, I don't care about the money. The money is irrelevant to me. The Dodgers have the financial flexibility to afford a Nolan Arenado on their books. I'm taking Nolan Arenado over those two chumps any day. And I'm sorry if anyone disagrees with that take. I still think Arenado's got something left in the tank. And if that's really our only option out there, then I'm willing to take a chance because this front office knows what they're doing. So let's get to A's comment now. So Tio is about to become a New York Yankee, according to some reporters, and it will be announced in a few hours. So what A is referring to is from Andy Morales, who I don't know too much about Andy Morales, but some people are saying that he was dead on about the Juan Soto news and has been accurate about other Latin American players before in the past. And according to Morales, that the Teoscar Hernandez to New York Yankees news is imminent. And I don't know how accurate that is, but it does seem like David Vassay and I guess Dodgers Nation earlier today jumped the gun a little bit too early about Teoscar Hernandez and the Dodgers finalizing a deal, because the big names like Ken Rosenthal, Jeff Passan have all said the deal's not finalized. So if the Dodgers aren't able to re-sign Teoscar Hernandez, it would certainly be a letdown. Can't
I mean,
say
it's
anything
such a
more.
layup. It's such a layup. I mean, you got to just do it. I don't know. Again, I don't know anything about this Morales guy either. But if what he is reporting is true, I mean, that's devastating. And it's weird saying that given what the roster looks like currently, because we've got superstars up the wazoo. But that is the one player I wanted this offseason out of anybody. We were saying it during the regular season, even to just extend him, just to give him a new contract in the middle of the year before we even got to October. And then you saw what he did in October. And to me, it's like, how hard October is to perform well. The Dodgers have been stacked before and have come up empty plenty of times, more times than they've succeeded, obviously. So when you have a player that is as good as Teoscar Hernandez is in the playoffs, and I'm grouping him in there with the Justin Turners of the world and Kike Hernandez and Jock Petersons and all those guys that have performed so well for the Dodgers in the playoffs that they've let go, I don't understand why you wouldn't bring him back. To me, you got to hold on to the guys that were great for you during the postseason, because that's what matters. They're going to make the playoffs every year. The Dodgers, you can expect them to make the playoffs, barring some absolute disaster. They're going to make the playoffs. So you need dogs on this team that can perform in October. And Teoscar Hernandez is the epitome of that. So I really would be very disappointed and devastated if they don't get this done.
Yeah. Can't fault the Dodgers. Can't fault Teoscar Hernandez. It was pretty apparent that Teoscar was always going to wait for whatever the Juan Soto decision amounted to. And then the teams that didn't get Soto would eventually flock to Teoscar. So he's probably going to get his bag. And the initial estimates were that Teoscar was going to get something around 3 years, 60 million. At this point, that kind of seems a little too low. I wouldn't be surprised if a team is now upping the offer and it's 4 years, 80 something million. It would be really hard for me to see the Dodgers go 5 years on Teoscar Hernandez. I don't know if they'd be willing to push that button. I don't know if they want to invest in a 32, 33-year-old outfielder with declining defense. We love his bat, and it would be a huge blow to lose Teoscar. And I'm with you. He was my number one bat target for the entire offseason. Not Juan Soto, Teoscar Hernandez. Wanted to lock him in, bring him back to the Los Angeles Dodgers. So we'll see if the decision comes tonight. It'd be kind of cool if it broke during the show. But if the Dodgers lose Teoscar Hernandez, it certainly feels like a gut punch and big loss to the Dodgers lineup. Based off its current state.
Huge.
So what are your thoughts on the Dodgers signing the best left-handed bat available, Michael Conforto?
I mean, I like it. I think that Conforto provides a really necessary left-handed corner outfield bat. We tried to do this with Jason Hayward last year. We saw that his 1 year resurgence was just that, 1 year, and he couldn't really repeat the success in year 2 with the Dodgers. So adding a guy like this that has a lot of pop, that can platoon maybe with an Andy Pages, I love this move. I think that it's someone that adds a lot to this team. That's kind of an under the radar type of move. And I think he definitely, when he left the Mets, it was sort of like, okay, cause he was hurt.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, what is he going to be able to do? Can he rebound? And then he did, he rebounded with the Giants just fine last year. And if he puts those numbers out again, I think it was like 20 home runs or something like that. You'll take that every time.
Yeah. There was a point when he initially entered free agency that you were talking about. And because he was a Boris client, I don't know if he still is, but the price was just too high. He wanted too many years and he was coming off or needed shoulder surgery. So it didn't make sense, but obviously he's fully recovered now. And his advanced metrics kind of suggest that the Dodgers might have just found themselves a sneaky bat with some serious pop. He's got pretty electric bat speed, really good slugging, able to barrel up on the ball phenomenally, and just has the ability to hit all kinds of different pitch mixes, especially the fastball. He crushes fastballs, and he can kind of hit lefties. But the way I'm looking at Michael Conforto right now, he's essentially the Jason Hayward replacement, but on steroids, and a much more capable and potent bat in the Dodgers lineup, because you're going from Jason Hayward, who was basically washed in 2024, to a guy that a lot of analysts and even guys that cover the Giants, they're not even mad that he's going to the Dodgers. They're actually hyping it up, saying that the Dodgers might have just found themselves another gem. And it seems like with the way this front office is able to calculate things, I trust them. It sounds like Michael Conforto will either be in right field or left field, depending on the Teoscar Hernandez situation, because they gave us word that Tommy Edman will be the center fielder. So Conforto will definitely be one of those corner outfield bats. And because they're paying him $17 million, he'll most likely be in the starting lineup just about every day, because there's not that many left-handed pitchers left in baseball, just the way the league's shaking out. So we'll see a lot of Conforto. I love that last season he just escalated each month and got better with his slugging. And if he was able to put up those numbers in San Francisco, kind of the advanced projections suggest that in a park like Dodger Stadium, he could mash up to 30 home runs next season.
Easily. But you'll take, I was right. He hit 20 bombs last year, 66 RBIs, 759 OPS. You'll take that because he's not going to slide right into, the number 3 hole in the lineup.
And and I think the last 2 months of the season, he had like a WRC plus of like 137 or something. So he was pretty hot near the end of the year. So he's getting out of a hellhole like San Francisco. And now you add him to the most stacked lineup in Major League Baseball. And he's at the bottom of the lineup. I feel like one of the biggest criticisms we had of the Dodgers in the first half of last year was that the bottom of the lineup was just non-existent. Well, now you add Conforto, who I think some of us were on board with bringing back Jock Peterson multiple times. Conforto kind of is like the Jock Peterson. He's basically the same bat player.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know about the defensive metrics, but I would assume he's a better defensive player than Jock Peterson.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely at this stage in their careers. So the one thing that kind of intrigues me about Conforto is I was expecting Dalton Rushing to get some at bats with the Dodgers, maybe in the second half of this upcoming season, but that kind of bounces him out of the lineup now potentially, especially if they bring back Teoscar or sign another right-handed outfielder bat, because Conforto, Edman, and then Pages are there along with maybe Teoscar. I don't know what the story will be with James Outman. He's certainly a huge question mark of what his future will be with the Dodgers. But I think at this point, it seems like they're going to wait another year on counting on Dalton Rushing. I don't think this rules out his career at all with the Dodgers. This is a one and done probably with Conforto. But for those that were curious about Dalton Rushing, because I know there was some people expecting him to make the team maybe as early as opening day, which I didn't see, but I know that he's the Dodgers' top prospect hitting wise. I think it kind of puts it on pause, and we'll have to wait a little bit longer for Rushing and some more seasoning in AAA.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation when you're talking about young players and having proven major leaguers be, preventing them from getting playing time. We certainly saw that with Michael Busch and Miguel Vargas trying to crack the roster and trying to find playing time. And unfortunately for guys like James Outman, he's just been so lost at the plate at the major league level. As soon as they send him down to AAA, he mashes, but up at the big league level, he just can't figure it out. He has a huge hole in his swing. I don't know what the future holds for Dalton Rushing, but I think what they might be doing is giving Dalton Rushing maybe another year in the outfield to see if maybe he can play that position a little better before they bring him up. And like you mentioned, Conforto only being a 1-year option, that may be the plan. Also, you never know what the Dodgers might need at the trade deadline with injuries and how they work out. So, those guys could be available for that as well.
Definitely. Javier T asking, will James Outman be a trade piece? That's a tough one because I don't know what value James Outman currently has, but for teams that are kind of looking to rebuild, I mean, whether it's Miami, the White Sox, St. Louis, I think James Outman would make a lot of sense. Milwaukee potentially could be interested in him. So I think the Dodgers could kind of just throw him in there for a team looking for a center fielder. It is hard to find good defensive center fielders in baseball, and James Outman is an excellent defensive center fielder. The issue is the strikeouts, and so a team's going to need to correct those issues with them. But it's really hard to see a place for James Outman with the Dodgers moving forward, just based off who they have on their lineup. And I don't think Andy Pages is behind Outman in the depth charts. So
no, he's definitely above him. I mean,
yeah.
Clearly he made the postseason roster, and then with them signing Tommy Edman to an extension and Gomes saying that he's going to be playing majority center field, that kind of cancels out center field.
Yeah, exactly. So the big question will be right now, what happens with Teoscar if they don't re-sign him? Do the Dodgers go after another corner outfielder, or do they stick with Andy Pages? So I think that's the big question right now. I guess Pages isn't going to play a whole lot if they bring back Teoscar based off the way the lineup looks. So that kind of interests me because I thought the Dodgers were for sure going to give him the most at-bats. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. But I'm fine with it because I just want to win. So if this is what the Dodgers feel like is the path to success, then fine with me. Let's talk about some bullpen now. And I know this guy you're very excited to have back. Blake Treinen agreeing to a 2-year, $22 million contract to return to the Dodgers bullpen. How do you feel about that?
I mean, he's the most valuable reliever in all of baseball, in my opinion. What he has done for this organization when he's been healthy has been nothing short of heroic. I think that we talk about Mookie Betts being the player that pushed them over the edge in 2020 to win that title. We don't win that title without Blake Treinen either. Just the way he was used, the fireman role that he succeeded in, they were bringing him in the fourth inning in the NLCS, I mean, he is just an absolute dog. And especially in the World Series, when Dave Roberts left him in there and he finished the job, and then they were able to bring in Walker Buehler to close it out after he had thrown 40 pitches or whatever it was. I mean, that just shows you what this guy is capable of doing. And that is all you want as a fan is to see players succeed in the playoffs, and then the team that you support, the front office, bringing those players back. And Blake Treinen is a huge example of that. Is the Dodgers needed to make a splash with their bullpen. They know that they've had a ton of injury concerns with their starting rotation. So why not bolster the bullpen to make sure that if they need to do what they did in the playoffs again next year, which wouldn't be ideal, but let's say for the sake of argument, you have a bullpen anchored by one of the most, if not the most valuable reliever in baseball.
Blake Treinen is easily, in my opinion, the best high leverage setup reliever in Dodgers franchise history. And the way he pitched his ass off last season, and the movement on his slider and sweeper, whatever you want to call it, the velocity on his fastball was there. He was basically unhittable in the postseason, had a disgusting 1.93 ERA in the regular season for the Dodgers. He had 7 wins, which doesn't really mean a whole lot, but I'm just giving him more credit there. He was a no-brainer. We know Dave Roberts wanted to prioritize bringing him back. I'm sure the front office felt the same way. No reliever that I've heard ever raves about the Dodgers as much as Blake Treinen has, says it's the best organization he's ever pitched for by far. And we all know he's not going to miss out on that opportunity to meet the upcoming president, Donald Trump, at the White House next season. So I don't even know if it was about the money for Blake Treinen, but I do feel like his contract is more than fair and he earned it. So glad to see them bringing him back. You need consistent and stabilizing forces in your pen, and that's exactly what Blake Treinen is. Everything suggests that he is the real deal and still a top 10 reliever, probably in all of Major League Baseball. And I love that, we'll get into in a second, that they're not done adding to the bullpen either. They're not done.
And I do want to get into those rumors, but just to cap this off, a lot of criticism last year was leveled against how the Dodgers bullpen is too old. You know, you had Ryan Brazier and Daniel Hudson and Blake Treinen and Evan Phillips and Brewster Gratterall, and a lot of Brewster is young, but you know, you had a lot of pitchers who were, you know, in the twilight maybe of their careers or whatever. I love the fact that this was an old bullpen. Like, I loved it. It was led by experience. It was led by champions. It was led by grit. It was led by guys that know how to win. And for other guys like Vesia, who has learned under these guys, has become an elite high leverage reliever because, I think, of this core bullpen that's been around for the last couple of seasons while he's been developing, I think is one of the most valuable things you can add to a team. Not a lot of people, like, in terms of, you know, being a baseball fan, you're not like, ooh, I can't wait to see what our bullpen does this year. But you need them. It's like an offensive line or like a defensive line or maybe special teams, you know, on a football team where you're not like super jazzed about a particular offensive lineman, but you need those guys to win football games. You need Blake Treinens, you need Evan Phillipses to win championships. So for me, I love the veteran leadership of this bullpen, and they just brought back one of the captains of that bullpen, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Definitely. So it's a good move. It's the right move. And we're more than happy to have Blake Treinen back for 2 more years. Probably will retire a Los Angeles Dodger, by the way, all things are looking for right now. So I want to make sure, if you guys have questions for the show, drop your questions in the chat. If you haven't hit the like button for us yet, give us some likes and we'll reward you with fun content and answering whatever questions you guys have. We'll do our best to get to them. So speaking of bullpen, it was Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic reported that the Dodgers and Robert Murray did the same. The Dodgers are still poking around and looking for other high leverage caliber relievers out there. And Fabian pointed out 2 names that the Dodgers are very interested in. One being the left-handed free agent, a guy we've talked about as a target in the past, Tanner Scott, and then a trade target on the Milwaukee Brewers who they're looking to get off the books, Devin Williams. Do you have a preference of one over the other, or are you good with either?
I'm good with either, but this is your, you know, the best Hanukkah / Christmas present you could ask for, Kevin. Those are 2 of the guys that you have talked about forever wanting on this team, especially Devin Williams, but you were big on Tanner Scott the last, I think, 2 seasons or something like that. So I know you're pumped about the idea of that. And I think that one of the comments I read from Fabian's article on Tanner Scott was that the Dodgers loved the way he kind of carved them up. I mean, he neutralized Shohei Ohtani, and I bet that the executives were super impressed by that. So bringing him over would be great. And then Devin Williams is a guy the Dodgers have been, connected to for a long time. I would be happy with either one. I think that either one would be a huge add to this bullpen.
You're right about Tanner Scott. That's definitely someone that's like very high on my Christmas list. And I mean, across the Marlins and the Padres in an all-star season, I mean, it's hard to argue against him being a top three reliever in baseball at this point. He had 9 wins for both teams combined, a 1.75 ERA, 84 strikeouts across 72 innings thrown, a 2.92 FIP, and for a lefty, the guy can throw close to 100 miles per hour. And like you said, he is basically Shohei Ohtani's kryptonite, along with a lot of other Los Angeles Dodgers. There's very few better high leverage left-handed relievers out there. And if the Dodgers can sign him off the free agent market, I mean, I'm not scared of whatever the price tag is. I think he'd be absolutely worth it. So I'm all in. I would love for them to get Tanner Scott. Devin Williams is also a name that I'm pretty fond of as well. I don't think the cost would be too crazy for the Dodgers if it's like a Gavin Lux and Robleski, which I think executives are maybe not executives, maybe like writers have thrown out there. That doesn't really faze me too much either. Although I do think Wroblewski is going to be a nice improvement candidate next season. But I mean, hell, if it's Dustin May and Lux for Devin Williams, I'm fine with it. But I like either. I think they're both great. I definitely do think the Dodgers will sign a high leverage reliever, even if it's not those two. I definitely would keep an eye out there. They need someone, and they're most definitely going to do it. So that's where I stand. But I love the aggressiveness with the bullpen.
What do you think about the idea of not having a set closer like they did last year, where it was like they didn't really have one guy that was the closer for a long stretch? It was Evan Phillips, but towards the end it was like whoever is the best person for this specific set of hitters in this specific situation, that's what they're going to bring in. If they brought in a guy like Devin Williams, who is the closer in Milwaukee, do you think that they make him the closer?
In the regular season, yeah, definitely. I don't know about the playoffs. The playoffs, it could be anyone's game. It seemed like in the playoffs this year, though, Blake Treinen basically became the Dodgers closer for the most part. So I think ultimately they will get a closer role, and it could shift at times. But yeah, Devin Williams would be the Dodgers closer, and possibly Tanner Scott if they got either of them. So it just doesn't seem like Evan Phillips is the right guy to be a closer. He's more valuable as the firearm guy, and then Michael Kopech looked pretty nice, but I'm sure they would also like him to be just a 7th or 8th inning guy.
How much longer do we have Kopech? Just this season?
Yeah, just one more season. We got BC making eyes in the chat. I don't know what that means. Maybe we're going to get some news. Would love for something to break on the incline. If you guys have any rumors or reports out there, drop them in the chat. We'll definitely get to that. If you have questions, more than happy to answer that. Let's talk Juan Soto. So we didn't talk about him really yet. Broke baseball. I don't think either of us were too surprised that he ended up going to the New York Mets. Always felt like this was going to be Steve Cohen's guy. He would probably sell one of his kids to get this deal done. I just felt like they were always all in on him. And the price tag of $765 million with, I think, escalators pushing it up to $805 million. It's just insane. Like, I said it online and didn't get much pushback, which is good. There isn't a world where Juan Soto should be getting paid more than Shohei Ohtani. I know on an average basis, Ohtani would technically be making more if he didn't have all the deferrals, but Ohtani clears Juan Soto, in my opinion. So good for the Mets. Good for fans who aren't going to cry anymore about there needing to be a salary cap. And it's not fair that the Dodgers buy all their players. Now, all of a sudden, it's cool that the Mets paid all this money for Juan Soto. So love to see that hypocrisy. But, that's how it goes, I guess.
I mean, this is a ridiculous contract. I think I saw Jeff Passan saying today that this is not a good baseball contract. This is an exceptional overpay. And I tend to agree with him. I think that in order to get Juan Soto, Steve Cohen needed to overpay, because otherwise he was going to go to the Yankees. And I think Scott Boras played this absolutely perfectly. He brought in all the different teams, had the Dodgers in there, jacking up the price, all of that. And I think that Steve Cohen, after the Mets, had an incredible Cinderella run to the NLCS last year, they needed to capitalize on that. And to get Juan Soto was the prize. And Steve Cohen said at the outset he wasn't going to be outbid, and he wasn't. So it's kind of funny, though, because Yankees fans are pissed, right? They're pissed that they didn't get Juan Soto, and rightfully so. I mean, the having him and Judge in the outfield for the foreseeable future would have been nice, but that contract might age really badly. And you're telling me that as an organization over the next 15 years, the Yankees can't figure out how to win a title? I mean, yes, Juan Soto is a terrific talent and maybe a generational talent, certainly as a hitter. But to me, it's like in the 15-year span that he's going to be a Met, you're telling me they can't figure out how to put a winning team on the field? If they can't do that, then they should cease to exist as an organization. So, they may not be that bad off without him anyway. Given that contract, I know that if the Dodgers had handed out a contract like that for Juan Soto, I would not be happy. And to be quite frank, I didn't even want Juan Soto. I didn't think that he provided anything to the team that they didn't already have, or that they couldn't already build. The Dodgers can win a World Series without Juan Soto. They just proved it. Because they beat him.
True. I would love that if this is true, according to John Heyman, that the Yankees actually had another costly error earlier in the season, and that's why they fumbled the bag on Juan Soto. That'll be kind of hilarious. So we know how much they shit the bed in the World Series. But Heyman was reporting that earlier in the season, apparently Juan Soto was very upset with the Yankees because a security guard essentially didn't let family members and like a chef / driver into a particular secured area. And that rubbed Soto the wrong way for quite some time. And maybe he didn't ultimately forgive them. So if that is the case, that's just hilarious that, a Yankees organization that once considered themselves the cream of the crop in all of Major League Baseball has just kind of fallen flattened on their face and humiliated themselves multiple times. They got the stupidest fans that interfere with the games and then think they're awesome. And then they have the worst defensive inning in World Series history. And now this with Juan Soto. So this organization is a sinking ship.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I couldn't agree more about the Juan Soto contract. It would never have made sense for the Dodgers to offer $765 million to bring in an outfielder they don't need. And for those that are claimed to be Dodger fans and are saying that Juan Soto is a better hitter than Shohei Ohtani, shame on you. And you should be absolutely embarrassed because Shohei Ohtani to this day is the best hitter in all of Major League Baseball. He's won a World Series more recently. He's got 3 MVPs, 2 in the American League, 1 with the Dodgers. How many MVPs has Juan Soto won? He wasn't even the best hitter on his team last year. Aaron Judge was the best hitter on his team last year.
And he won MVP, Aaron Judge.
Exactly. And Juan Soto has been this will be his 4th team in like 4 years now. If the Mets win a World Series, then I guess at the end of the day, it's worth it. But do you really need to pay $765 million? Are you that desperate to feel like you couldn't assemble something better without Juan Soto? And for the fans that say money is not an obstacle for the Dodgers, I couldn't disagree more. If you get tagged into a bad contract, like what could potentially happen with Juan Soto, if you don't think that could cap them off financially and prevent them from making other moves, then you just simply do not know Major League Baseball. Because if you put that contract on the Dodgers books and now he doesn't pan out in a year or two because he has an injury or something, or he just regresses out of nowhere because who knows if he's actually 26, do you think the Dodgers are going to drop another $400 million on another hitter? Most likely not. They would probably have to get someone like Mookie or Freddie potentially off the books. They're not just going to load up on a million contracts. That's never been the Dodgers' way. They'll have a high payroll, but they're not just going to add dumb money because they have the foundation. That's just not how teams operate.
Yeah, and I think that fans that think that the Dodgers are just spending just ridiculous amounts of money for no reason, they're not paying attention to the team. They spend so wisely and carefully, and they evaluate talent better than anybody, and they hitch their wagon to guys that they know are going to be World Series champions or have already been them, like Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. Those are the guys that they wanted on this team long term. They didn't want Max Scherzer. They didn't want Trey Turner. We've said this over and over again. The one mistake that they made in hindsight probably was Corey Seager, because now they have this weird thing at shortstop with Mookie Betts that I'm sure nobody wanted. So, but to me, they are so methodical in who they pay and who they spend money on, that to say that they're just out there spending recklessly you're just not paying attention. The Padres spend recklessly. The Mets spend recklessly. The Yankees have been known to spend recklessly. And you see what happens to the Angels spend recklessly. And you see what happens to those franchises. They're not in contention to win every year because their evaluation of talent isn't as good as what the Dodgers have.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the Yankees a few years ago, they should have signed Corey Seager probably, but they capped themselves off financially because they felt like they were too committed to the large contracts of Giancarlo Stanton, Garrett Cole, and they knew Aaron Judge was someone they were going to have to pay. And you look at what the Dodgers are doing, they're going to spend their money smart and wisely, like you said. And it's not about just the big name player, it's about the right player, and it's about acquiring the right depth pieces, because it's not the one big name that wins you championships in Major League Baseball. It's the role players and the depth guys that help win you championships. Nobody thought Tommy Edman was going to win NLCS MVP, but he did, and he's not even an all-star. So you don't need
Right. And
you
and
don't
and
need
guess
the
what
big
happened
names.
in 2017? You had Chris Taylor and Justin Turner NLCS MVPs. You never know. You have to pay the right guys. You have to assemble the right amount of talent. That's what building a winning baseball team's about.
Definitely. Let's get to a couple quick topics, and then I'll let you jump in if there's anything else you want to talk about. And if people have questions, drop them in the YouTube chat since we still have a few more minutes. Roki Sasaki was posted today. The expectation is that he's going to meet around with a number of Major League Baseball teams and then is eligible to sign, I think, around January 15th. I still haven't wavered on my stance on Roki Sasaki. I think the Dodgers are still the favorites to sign him. And I think there's a reason they haven't been aggressive with re-signing other starting pitchers like Walker Buehler and Jack Flaherty, or chasing other right-handed names, because they're very confident that they're going to get Roki Sasaki. And you have two managers that kind of did the complete opposite of the spectrum. You've basically got the San Diego Padres and Mike Schilt, who's just on his hands and knees right now, willing to basically do anything to bring Roki to the Padres because they're capped financially. Speaking of tying yourself into bad contracts, but that's for another day.
I know. I brought up the Padres as in my list of teams that just kind of spend whatever.
Yeah, and they think their offseason like basically hinges on what happens with Roki, because that's all they can afford. But then you got the Dodgers, who are playing their cards right, keeping it concealed and under the radar of what they feel like is going to happen with Roki Sasaki. But I'll say it again on this podcast, and if I'm wrong, then so be it. Roki Sasaki, if he's going to be a part of the Dodgers organization because they're the best in the business, by the end of 2025, we would be talking about Roki Sasaki as a top 10 pitcher in all of Major League Baseball. And I've said it, I've heard others say it. The guy is about as close to Paul Skeens as you're going to get right now with age and pure stuff. And so if the Dodgers get Roki Sasaki, that will be the best free agent pitching signing in all of baseball and in year one. I'm taking that to the bank, and I'm marking my guarantee. Roki would be more effective in the short term and the long term than Blake Snell, then Corbin Burns, then Max Fried. That's how good and how high I am on Roki Sasaki. And we'll be talking about him as a number 2 or number 3 for the Dodgers this season if they get him.
One thing, we already got Blake Snell, so we can see if we get Roki Sasaki, if that will come true of what you're saying. But yeah, I agree. I think that in terms of starting pitching, that is going to be the Dodgers' next target. If they fail to get him, then they obviously move on to a different starting pitcher. I don't see the Dodgers acquiring another starting pitcher before they figure out what's going on with the Sasaki sweepstakes. But at the same time, I do think that they can get other things done, like we were talking about with Teoscar Hernandez. Roki Sasaki is the prize, and like we said, it's hard. What the Dodgers have to entice Roki Sasaki is the winning culture that they have, and also Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto are already on the team. That's what they have, because they can't, because of his age, because of Sasaki's age. It's not like they can dangle the money in front of him. Every team is kind of on a similar playing field in that respect. So it's about selling him on winning. Do you want to win, or do you want an opportunity to win every year? And if the answer is yes, then it's a no-brainer.
Couple or 3 names that are potentially on the trade block, and I was just curious if any of them intrigued you. Carlos Correa, Kyle Tucker, or Luis Castillo.
The pitcher, Luis Castillo,
Yes.
the Mariners. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the Dodgers could turn Luis Castillo back into an ace. And I'm not saying that he was bad the past few years, but he hasn't really lived up to the hype that he kind of had when he was with the Reds. So I think the Dodgers could really do something great with a Luis Castillo. Carlos Correa is a tough sell for Dodgers fans for obvious reasons. But would I rather have a guy like Carlos Correa at shortstop over Mookie Betts? Absolutely, any day of the week. I don't think putting your superstar outfielder, Gold Glove, World Series MVP outfielder, making him play shortstop is the move over a proven shortstop like a Correa. So I could be convinced there, even though it is a tough pill to swallow, given what he did with the Astros. Now, the other Astro that you mentioned, Kyle Tucker, I'd love him too. He was, if you remember, was not on that 2017, the biggest cheating team of all time. So he kind of gets away with that, even though I feel like some fans still boo him thinking that he was on that team, but he wasn't. I think Kyle Tucker's a great hitter, and I would love to have him in that Dodgers lineup. Although I think with the recent signing of Conforto and hopefully the inevitable signing of Teoscar Hernandez kind of puts that out of reach.
Yeah, I mean, well, two things. Like, if they lost Teoscar, then I mean that makes it even more of a reason to get Kyle Tucker. I highly doubt the Astros would even trade him, let alone to the Dodgers. But Chandler Rome, who's basically the best reporter for the Astros, mentioned that the Astros were willing to listen in on offers for Kyle Tucker. And if you're not familiar with Tucker's game, he's basically the type of outfielder that no one in your farm system is untouchable if you were to acquire him, because that's how good of a player he is. So if the Dodgers pulled it off and depleted the farm, I'm all for it. But this is just unlikely hypotheticals were thrown out there, and names.
I mean, how do we know that the Astros won't deal someone to the Dodgers? I don't know that the executives have that kind of hatred towards one another that maybe the fans do. So
right.
I don't know if that's necessarily a storyline, but I think obviously from the Dodgers front office perspective, adding an Astros player, whether it's Kyle Tucker, and even more, daring would be Carlos Correa. Alex Bregman too is a free agent. Like adding those guys is going to be a tough sell to the Dodgers fans. I think that's the only drawback, but I don't think that these executives have that hatred towards each other like fans would.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And then the last name I wanted to bring up, and then if you had anything you wanted to cover, definitely throw those topics at me or questions. Walker Buehler, what do you think happens with him?
I hate to say it, but I feel like the writing might be on the wall with him in terms of him leaving and pitching for another team. I think what the Dodgers would be willing to do with him would be like a 1 year prove it kind of deal, to where he has one season to really prove that he's durable, that he's effective, and that he can make it to October and pitch in October. And if he can do all those things, then obviously he's gearing up for a pretty nice offseason after the 2025 season. But if Walker Buehler thinks that he can get more years and more money from another team, then obviously I think that's what he's going to do. And I don't think the Dodgers are in a position right now to kind of offer him that, given the Blake Snell signing and then, the Roki Sasaki stuff. I don't know that the Dodgers can really commit a long-term deal to a Walker Buehler. And I don't know if it's wise to do that either.
I feel like if the Dodgers were higher on Walker Buehler and they were adamant about bringing him back, they would have just made everything simple and give him the qualifying offer. But because they didn't do that, that just tells me that they're just maybe not as high on him as Dodger fans might be. And they might see something in his underlying metrics and longevity that just might not play out. And that doesn't mean Walker Buehler is not going to find it and be an effective pitcher. But I just think that they prefer Roki Sasaki over Walker Buehler. And the pitching market is just super expensive. Like if Luis Severino could get 3 years over $20 million a year, it just feels like Walker Buehler is going to get something remotely close to that, which I think the Dodgers maybe didn't see coming, or they did see coming, and they don't feel that he's just worth it. So the market is strong on Buehler. The Cubs, the Red Sox, the Athletics, the Tigers, a lot of teams are trying to court him. The Yankees, the Mets. So it just feels like, and we're not hearing the Dodgers, it just feels like, unfortunately, Walker Buehler might be finding a new team unless we're set up for a surprise.
Yeah, I know. I'm disappointed in how it's turned out and how everything's kind of falling into place or sort of leading us to believe that he won't come back, because oh man, what he's meant to this franchise is everything. Everything that I was talking about with Blake Treinen, you can put that on Walker Buehler too. The what he's done in the playoffs for this team, what he did in 2020 and what he did in 2024 cannot go unnoticed. And to me, you want to keep the team. Like, God, 2024 was such a magical season with a magical roster that you're like, you just want to hold on to every single player. You want every single player to come back. You want to run it back with as close to the same roster as possible. And I would love Walker Buehler to be a part of that. And if they can figure out a way to do that, that's cost effective, that isn't that doesn't put the Dodgers in jeopardy or in a bad spot financially, then I would do it. But like I said, if you can find a better deal with more years and more money somewhere else, then the Dodgers really can't compete with that.
Anything else you got, Jake, for tonight?
The one other nugget from the winter meetings that I saw was that there is no timetable for when Shohei Ohtani will pitch. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Are you worried about him pitching this year? Are you not? I know the Dodgers are opening the season in Japan, right? So they already said that he's not going to be pitching in that series. So what do you make of this? Do you think it's a big deal? Are you worried that he won't pitch this year? Next year, I should say.
I think that's a good question, because Shohei Ohtani was going to be my final thought. So I'm going to tie it all together then right now. On this day, exactly 1 year ago, Shohei Ohtani announced on his Instagram page he made a decision to come to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Despite a day earlier, we had JP Hornstra, who's in the running for Idiot of the Year. So if you want to vote in the Incline Awards, posted that link actually a minute ago. Vote in the 2024 Incline Awards. JP Hornstra, John Morosi said Shohei Ohtani was on a plane to Toronto, or to JP's point, he signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. And then you've got Bob Nightingale, who was the hero of the day, saying Ohtani's not on a plane to Toronto. He did not sign with the Blue Jays and all that fun stuff. So that was an interesting day on social media, followed by the next day where, like today, a year ago from today, that Shohei Ohtani announced that he was going to the Dodgers, which, in my opinion, of all the moments in Dodgers franchise history, I'm willing to argue, even with a wall, that that's a top 5 moment in franchise history for the Dodgers when Shohei announced he was coming to LA. And it's looking like I'm right, because he already won a championship and a World Series and an MVP, and broke records, the 50 home runs, the 50 stolen bases, brought Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and probably in some way Teoscar Hernandez and other talented athletes, and maybe setting this team up for a dynasty. But to answer your question, and thank you, BC, for voting, to answer your question, I'm not too concerned. It's better to play it slow with him. 2 elbow surgeries, didn't pitch at all last season. We don't really need Shohei to be in the rotation in March and April, let alone maybe even May. I mean, I'm fine with him being a second half pitcher and seeing what he's got and being pretty fresh for the postseason. So if Ohtani wants to just focus with the bat at first and then ramp him up, I'm good with that. That's why the Dodgers got to have the depth in the rotation and not have to lean on Ohtani for a full 28 starts or whatever it would be with a 6-man rotation. Ease him back into that. I'm exactly on the same board with Tyler Glasnow. Keep that guy healthy so he can pitch in October, and just, let the Gonsolins and maybe Nick Frasso and whoever else knack the lower end of the totem pole. Let them eat the innings and kind of let the offense carry you for a couple months, and then get your top arms built up and ride it out for the second half. So to answer your question and reiterate, no, I'm not concerned. Seems like the right move.
Yeah, I'm on board with you on that. My final thoughts are this. Just sign Teoscar Hernandez. Just sign him. That's all I want. That's all I want for Christmas this year. I don't care about any other moves that they make. I don't care. I don't even care if they lose out on Sasaki. I only care about Teoscar Hernandez. I think that he's fallen in love with the Dodgers. The fans have fallen in love with him. I don't know that there's been another player that's only spent a season with the team that has endeared himself to this fan base as much as he has, and to this clubhouse, and to the winning culture. I just don't think that there is a smarter offseason move out there than bringing him back. They need to make it happen. If they don't, that's just devastating. I think for a lot of different reasons that we already brought up. I would love to have Teoscar Hernandez back with this team. I think he means more to this team than people realize.
Well said. Well, I think the Teoscar Hernandez news is going to break either tonight or tomorrow. I think it's like on the finish line. So stay tuned for that. And if the Dodgers have if the Dodgers have massive news tonight, I may have to go live again. We'll see what happens. But for now, I'm signing off. I'm going to be in the shadows, seeing what's going on in the winter meetings. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Leave a review, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment if you're watching post live feed. And if you haven't hit those notifications to have them go on when we're going live, then hit that noti button. We got more shows coming. Kevin and Jake going out. Your Dodgers, 2024 World Series champions. Don't let anyone